Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Carmen Bekker.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for having me here today. It's a real pleasure to come and talk to you. And this topic about what's keeping us up at night, I think there's one topic that I will keep coming back to, and it seems to be at the centre of everything, and it's the customer. And I know that's something that you've touched on a lot throughout the conference, and it does seem that all roads lead back to the customer. One of the things I was thinking about myself last night when I was thinking about what does keep me up at night, and one of the things that it is Netflix. It's something that I can't seem to put down, that keeps sending me more things to watch that I really, really love, and that has me pressing, yes, I'll go to the next episode, even though I'm thinking, oh, it's like 11, maybe I need to go to bed now. No, I'll watch one more, or just maybe a little half an episode. And I think one of the things that Netflix does so well is deeply understand its customer, and they are a truly great example of a customer-centric organisation that can keep the loyalty and keep customers coming back, keep them addicted. So, as we said, we surveyed 220 Australian CEOs, large companies and small companies, some of them some of the biggest in Australia, and we talked to them about what issues they're facing as CEOs today. It's a challenging world out there because they see a mandate for digital transformation, for innovation, for changing their business models, but also they need to do this while keeping pace with customer needs and customer expectations. They need to become more nimble and more responsive. At the same time, there's political uncertainty, there's unrest, and a period of continued cost pressures. It's a difficult balancing act, and one that's hard for them to manage. It's hard for them to decide which business decisions are the right ones at the right time. So these are the 10 key issues that we see facing Australian businesses at the moment. They're digital transformation, innovation and disruption, regulation, political paralysis, customer centricity, cost competitiveness, public trust, cybersecurity and data privacy, big data, infrastructure and livable cities. Just for today, we've decided to focus on 5 in the interests of time. And these are the things we thought might be key to some of the decisions you're making in your business, the top 5 of interest. And the first one being digital transformation. The consensus with all leaders is that digital transformation is absolutely necessary, but depending who you talk to, it means different things to different people. So some could be talking about investments in the back-end systems of their organisations. Others could be talking about digitally connecting or automating their processes. Others could be talking about developing new products or using data to make decisions. Or they could be talking about a complete transformation of the business model. Or as the quote says, it could just be trying to keep up with their digitally native customers. When we refer to digital transformation, there are a few things we take into account. We take into account the use of advanced technology and ways of working in the front or middle office and the back office technologies available. And true transformation, we all know, must also include culture. This is often the poor cousin behind more visible technology investment. Culture is something needed to instill a customer-first and digital-first mentality amongst employees and partners. For example, when we're implementing CRM systems with our clients, we're seeing a much bigger investment now in the culture and change and the people aspect of that integration. So how do you know if your company or your organisation is in need of digital transformation? We have a checklist that we suggest thinking about. Systematic cost pressures exist. There's a potential for industry disruption. There's a changing competitor landscape. High transaction volumes in your system, potentially a churn of customers or product parity, and advanced technology such as AI or IoT is being used by your competitors. And once you identify that you need a transformation, how do you know whether you've got a good outcome or not? And what we talk about is a connected enterprise that's digitally connected, where employees and partners are in the same ecosystem, and that ecosystem works with pace and priority. Our leaders do want to invest in digital transformation, and they want to improve their customer outcomes, but they really also want that investment to last. The next area of focus is innovation and disruption. So we talk about the cloud, and you've probably talked about this in your data chats in the last couple of days. It not only holds organisational data, but it holds a lot of personal data. Everything we do now, from our gym memberships, travel, health, banking, all that data is stored in the cloud. Blockchain is also popping up everywhere, and when Google could book a haircut, that was when we all took a leap forward in knowing exactly what's possible. So innovation and disruption is absolutely necessary, and if not essential to our future. And what we're seeing is a lot of global players coming into Australia to disrupt our local market. And these global players are bringing with them a very sophisticated use of data and a very sophisticated learning curve from their current customers. We're also seeing that when they're up against Australian customers, we're seeing that some of our companies here don't have the data worked out to the point where they can innovate and disrupt at the same level. This is a really big issue for Australian business leaders. Well, how to confront it? Take a leaf out of Bezos's book and wake up every morning terrified, not of competitors, but of customers. Customers are the ones you have a relationship with. They're loyal to you and you owe them a great obligation. However, that loyalty will only last till someone offers them something better to win them over. We look at the fintechs now coming to Australia and the waves they're making in the banking industry. Or look at Sweat, our very own Aussie startup, disrupting the world of gyms and personal trainers. Businesses have to keep innovating. They have to disrupt or be disrupted. And the key here is to focus on customer centricity, focusing innovation efforts on forging genuine intimacy with their customers, creating experiences so intuitive and useful that the relationship with the customers takes on meaning and value. So it's not tech for tech's sake. It's tech to create intimacy. So for innovation to work, it has to be within the service and the needs of its customers. Which leads us on to something that really underpins everything, but this came out from our CEOs as top of mind: customer and citizen centricity. Citizen centricity is there because this is also a key priority for governments and something they're very, very concerned about. They really have realised and understand the importance of being citizen-centric. I mean, all of us in the room know that customer has always been king. But in most sectors in the past, we saw that customers had a traditionally sort of weak bargaining position. They didn't hold a lot of information. They didn't necessarily have many options. But now, given the transformation and the change in technology and available sources of information for customers, that era is over, and the customer is now boss, and doesn't everyone know it? Global disruptors and FANGs have meant that the disruption and the expectation of customers now has increased to a point where your bank is being compared to Airbnb. You can no longer just think that by looking in category and being category best that you're going to win on the customer's mind. So putting customer at the heart of your business or being customer-centric sounds kind of simple, but as we know, no digital transformation is easy, and there is no way that you can do that quickly and simply. A connected enterprise is at the core of this, and this is something that needs to be taken very seriously. It's also a challenge because understanding exactly what customers want is far from easy. We recently, through Acuity, undertook a survey of 2,000 Australian customers, asking them in all sorts of categories exactly what they wanted out of corporates. The top line results we got were very clear but very unhelpful. Across all sectors, customers said they wanted to pay less. So they wanted to pay less fees for telcos. At supermarkets, they wanted lower prices. Even superannuation, which was surprising, customers wanted to pay less in fees, prioritised over get better investment returns. So while this does point perhaps to a societal trend from last year and something customers are thinking about tightening their belts, what we do see here is that if we focused all of our efforts on what customers say they want, we might never get to where we need to go. It would be a race to the bottom. A customer can't tell you how to disrupt. A customer can't tell you how to produce the next innovation. What a customer can talk to you about is outcomes and what they need and what they want. Better, faster, cheaper, more. The impetus has to be on us in corporates and organisations to get a really deep and better understanding of what the customer needs are and what their values are, and delivering on those. Delivering on those with the right mix of human interaction and automation. If you've ever interacted with Bendigo Bank or Singapore Airlines, these were two companies that came out in our Customer Excellence Report as top in the Australian market. And these two companies did the top two things that our Australians love well. And the first one is personalisation, which is key for Australians. And personalisation is all about show me, tell me you know me, show me you know me, make me feel like you know me. And the second is have integrity. And integrity ranges from having a purpose, being trustworthy, but also saying you will do what you promise you will do. So there's no silver bullet, but if you understand your customer, you've engaged employees on delivering that demand, you are well on your way. Because customers want automation and human service. Customers want personalisation and deep data security. Customers want open social media channels, but they also don't want you to overstep the mark. Customers also want transparency, but they want you to be protective and follow regulation. Overall, what we do know is what customers want is authenticity, and that has come out in some of the other things throughout the conference. They want to know a brand is a good corporate citizen before they interact. And that is a key to a relationship. And, you know, Monday's situation with the Royal Commission has seen that more than anything, the impact of a fallout of trust on a whole system and society. The next area is cybersecurity and data privacy. This authenticity and trust move us onto this section because it's no longer an IT issue. Cybersecurity and data, corporations have been awakened to this broad issue of crime. And there's a significant amount of confidential data now stored by corporations. And this is client data. This is something we've got to be very careful of. It's making our organisations prime targets for hacking, etc. So building customer trust around having strong policies around data is essential, and it's key moving into 2019 and beyond. In Australian ASX listed 100 companies last year, we saw a significant increase in the number of data breaches and cyber attacks, and our exposure to the risk is on the rise. There's more personable, identifiable information in systems, there's more intellectual property, and there's more data being moved around in very vulnerable ways. It also starts to get very complicated when customers tell us they actually want more personalised interactions and experiences. So how do you handle these two conundrums? Protecting our data is more challenging because we're dependent on third parties often and digital services that step outside our walls. New laws have made talking about or disclosing a breach mandatory, and that has come into effect now. And so corporates and organisations are also running the risk of potential reputation risk when they do have a cyber attack or a data breach. I know I would rather know about a cyber attack than not know, but when PayPal talked about their data breach, I don't know, I started using my card a bit more online, stopped using my PayPal account. And even last week, my kids' school app, School Bag, I don't know if anyone uses it, but it's just an app where they tell you what's happening at the school. They sent me an email saying they'd have a massive data leak and a breach. And I thought, gosh, all my kids' information is in that thing. And I've written a note to the school recommending they change apps. You know, customers and people are reacting to these things now, and corporates have to be careful to protect their reputation. What we see is that a lot of Australian companies have very good policies. It's just making sure the implementation keeps up. And it's a natural consequence of poor implementation with busy working environments. And so what we're seeing to fight this is automation and continuous monitoring. We also see the same need in data privacy. So data's fast becoming the best or the most intangible asset for organisations, enabling better product development and personalised service offerings. This growing commoditisation of data, however, it's called for this sweeping regulation change because we can't just have data floating out there without serious regulation around it, given the benefit and the asset that it is. So the introduction of GDPR in Europe has really changed the game here. Even though it's a European law, we see many Australian companies who have European customers and now following that regulation. And we predict, well, we can see more and more regulation is already coming through the Customer Act with the open banking situation, and we see that's going to roll out. And that means companies that will succeed in this situation are going to be more courageous in exploring the analytics and the automation that technology needed to ensure cybersecurity and data breaches don't happen. You have to give customers the reassurance that their data is well protected. And for me, this is really about a gift. Customers have given you something by giving you their data. They've given you something personal and something that they own. And it's up to organisations to look after it well. And that's how you get the trust. So that leads us to the final topic that's on the lists and in the minds of not only CEOs, but I would say journalists, politicians, and certainly in my house, dinner party or dinner table conversation, and that's public trust. The deficit of public trust has widened on both sides. We see this. There's poor behaviour in the world of politics and business, and also on the other hand, public have more expectations and a growing trend of social media where everyone has a voice and everyone has the ability to influence. This means people can have views. The Royal Banking Commission is a proof point in the decline in the system. We can also see share prices suffer. We saw that both during the hearing and we saw some share movements on Monday when the results came out. It's this public trust issue is affecting us all. Social licence to operate is key, and this is an evolution from corporate social responsibility, and it's an important topic because it's how organisations gain approval and the ongoing trust of not only their stakeholders but communities, customers, employees to operate and to operate well, and this is becoming increasingly dependent on how much organisations trust you. So how do you build trust? And once you've got it, how do you keep it? I always talk about to my clients about a piggy bank, and you've got to keep filling up trust because one day it's going to empty out the bottom and you need to have enough in there to weather the storm. And if that's depleted, then when something comes, it's going to be very challenging to build it back up again. Organisations need to take a very strong look to the heart of their business, their missions, their values, their purpose. They need to understand about themselves, and they need to understand their behaviours because it's those behaviours that happen on the inside have to be well accepted also on the outside. They have to be behaviours that can be exposed and be judged from the outside. Shareholders can no longer be the main priority. The main priority has to be the wider community base. When we look at brand valuations now, for example, at Kpmg, we don't just look at the commercials. We will look at a much wider breadth of things that are driving that value, such as reputation and customer. So CEOs are increasingly acting on this. We're seeing a lot more in the active listening space. So we're seeing a lot more customer work and customer listening from CEOs. We're seeing social responsibility high on the agenda, and we're seeing that we're seeing companies moving to, things like equal pay, the same values for a senior employee as a junior employee, looking at the multiplier between the highest paid and the lowest paid. We're seeing trends in that direction, and this is the right way for our organisations to be going to help build that trust. One example you've probably all discussed here, but again, to go back to my Netflix habit, is the Fire Festival. I just think that is the most fantastic example of poor public trust because, there was a building up of something that was fantastic and something we all wanted to buy into to be pulled out as lies and leading to criminal charges. So the one thing I'd like to leave with you as we look back at the top 10 is really underlying all that, there's a deep link back to the customer. Deeply understanding, developing and nurturing customer needs is absolutely key. Making your organisation truly centric is what will help you through 2019 and beyond. Thank you. I look forward to some questions.
Is everybody ready with some questions? Have some ideas of great things to ask? Well, when you look at KPMG, how many hours did you put into this report, Carmen?
Oh, gosh, quite a few, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you
all
did.
All of us, yes. There were a lot of contributors, yeah. So, hours.
Well, listen, we're ready to hear more about those hours of research. Go ahead and take a seat, and I'm going to bring up
Thank you.
Amanda Hicks. So please, Carmen, just welcome yourself right to the middle. Amanda Hicks is a lead partner of Kpmg and Acuity, Kpmg's specialist market research and customer insights advisory service. She has over 20 years specialist experience in customer insights, most recently as founder and managing director of Acuity Research and Insights, one of Australia's leading boutique market research consultancies, which was acquired by Kpmg in 2017. Amanda works closely with some of Australia's leading corporations to help them gain better consumer insights, including how consumers feel, what they expect, and what they want in the future. So we'll cover all of that and more. So again, get your questions ready, and let's have a chat. Carmen, how long have you been at Kpmg?
Can you hear me? Yeah, great. I've been at KPMG for just over a year now, and one of the key things we're working on at the moment is working with businesses in this area of digital transformation and building out that customer centricity from the heart of the organisation. That's the on the customers, the customer being on the mind of the CEO is leading to big changes from within. And that's something that's really key to what our team's working on right now.
Well, and that's something I think that's almost become a really big buzzword, almost like disruption, which is customer centricity.
Yes.
And it's something that we've been talking about in different aspects of the business of events over the last couple of days. It's number 5 on your top 10 list. And I love like that it's a top 10 list. It's so easy to identify with. So customer centricity is number 5, but it's also an underlying issue throughout, really, the other 9 pillars. So why is this? And why do you think the trigger for customer centricity is now versus another time? Who would like to take that? Then you both can chime in.
Yeah.
Oh, well, look, I agree with you. From Carmen's and my perspective, we've been thinking about customers for 20 years.
Right.
It really feels like the customer's only taking a seat at the CEO table or the C-suite, probably in the past 4 or 5. One of the biggest things that's really emerged is that customers themselves have become empowered, so that as digital disruption has taken place in the market, we're seeing customers empowered with greater ability to access information, greater ability to choose organisations. They are able to express their demands more in terms of the kind of service and products they expect. And organisations are also realising, of course, that customer is the key to growth. If you want to grow these days, that is where we have to go. We have to start out at what the customer needs and then re-evaluate our organisations through that lens, rather than perhaps sort of 5 or 10 years ago, where we'd be looking at sort of how can we do things most cost effectively that suits ourselves and hope that customers come to us. We now have to sort of meet customer needs. So customer centricity underlines everything now, because I think actually customers have a seat in the C-suite, and so every decision from digital transformation through to trust, through to big data, always has to be seen through what does the customer want, how can we deliver better to the customer through this, this way.
Well, what's been the CEO and the C-suite response as to how they receive that customer information? I mean, there was a time where you filled out a comment card, and hopefully it got back to the manager of the restaurant you were eating at. The social media, of course, is everywhere these days, and smart companies monitor it and respond to it. But where have you found the C-suite really take leadership in a new and different way in listening and then acting on their customers' points of view?
Well, one of the first things to say is yes, the C-suite is now currently almost overwhelmed with customer information. I mean, big data started it when we started to realise just how much we could uncover about our customers. And then, of course, channels now that allow customers to communicate directly with us through social media means that we're learning more and more about our customers all the time. I think one of the big moves recently in terms of customer investigation, really about which sort of underlies customer centricity, is how can we get everyone to feel empathy towards the customer? So what are the channels of communication, and also what are the ways of exploring and getting to know our customers that mean we actually can truly understand our customer, not just follow them as numbers through data, not just see their results in surveys, but get to the heart and mind of what they're thinking. And so there's there's a variety of different ways that companies try to do that, but I think the best companies utilise a mixed methodology. They try and get as much information in as many ways as possible, but that really starts to get to what are customers feeling rather than just what are customers doing.
And go ahead, please.
And
Anna.
I think part of it is technology based. So when you see organisations with a single customer view, they truly understand what their customers are viewing. And some clients we work with that might be a multi-brand structure may not have customer data that crosses brands. But you look at something like the Hyatt group of hotels, 12 hotels, brands underneath that group, and you look at something like the Andaz, which is an excellent boutique hotel experience, they know if that customer has stayed in any other Hyatt within the group, and they know their preferences of pillow, etc., within the whole group. So that in that situation, they're very front-footed in being able to answer the customer need. And we also see organisations using social to address customer needs straight away. So not waiting or escalating to a customer complaint centre or a call centre, etc., but actually using social as the medium to respond immediately and close down a situation quickly, to
Yes.
solve the client issue. So either solve it on the ground or solve it through social rather than waiting through the channels. And we're seeing people that are doing that are getting very good customer experience scores.
So obviously they're putting more and more toward resources by manpower
Absolutely.
towards answering that social media. It's interesting. You talk about the Hyatt containing 12 brands and the Andaz stay being able to know what the preferences were everywhere else. There are many more companies, many companies that have multiple brands under them and are acquiring more and more companies. How are they then sharing that information among themselves? Is it just a better investment in technology? Because we find a lot of corporations that I'm sure you give briefs to and proposals to that maybe you've done work with one side of the company, they don't seem to talk to the other side.
No.
More or less when you have 12 brands and you're trying to pitch them why you should do their event. What have you found that they're doing to communicate among each other?
It's technology based normally. When it's working that well, it's technology based. But that's the key to it, to have that single customer view. And so I'm not sure about the procurement systems. That becomes a little different story when you're pitching for work for different events with different brands. But we're seeing more and more, even in the back office, so where you'd see HR systems or procurement systems or finance systems sit, we are seeing more and more corporates who have multi-brands or multi-companies combining the back end.
So really, when some folks are pitching these corporations, something to ask for is sort of that single customer view, to be a little bit more all-encompassing of people that would either attend a conference or an event or otherwise.
Exactly. If you know that a customer has attended event A in event brand A and event B in brand B, perhaps there's a link. So and perhaps there's a capability to sell more or gain more from that customer.
Very interesting. You talked about using different methodology to show empathy with the customer. Is that all technology or is it in the formation of their messaging of advertisements and commercials? How are they able to communicate to the customer that, hey, we hear you, we're making changes to address you?
Look, to Carmen's point, I think underlying almost anything these days is excellent technology. But the trick is for organisations to not just show that they're good at technology, but that they're good at service as well. So often I think for customers, they're expecting that seamless experience between service that's delivered through technology or service that's delivered face-to-face. And in that way, by everybody sort of being enabled through knowing more about that customer, they can proactively anticipate customer needs, which sort of certainly demonstrates empathy. Technology in that way can suggest example, you've been to event A, you've been to event B, we can proactively suggest that event C or event D would be,
nice.
Particularly suited towards you. You might be able to predict perhaps what they would like to eat at events, sort of that proactive capability. I think that's often these days how customers are seeing empathy, because the great technology disruptors are really leading the way and setting everyone's expectations in that sense, that it will be a proactive anticipation of needs.
Well, and I think that's what, everybody in this room and this conference is all about, getting the one up on the competition by being proactively aware of everything that's necessary. So when you look at something like this extraordinary report, and you can include different notations from that in your briefs and proposals, it really is neat to see these top 10 things that are probably most on the minds of people you're pitching to. But it was interesting because almost when you look at the things that weren't included in the report, it's just as interesting to me as those that were. So there are some things that didn't make the top 10. Climate change didn't make it. Energy, tax reform. These are always being reported in the media as key issues for organizations. Is that just media hype? Why didn't they make that list?
Look, firstly to say, I think every issue that we listed was important. It's just the relative at the top 10 at the moment. I think it probably reflects at the moment CEOs understanding the need for change quite rapidly. That we're really, while there are very big significant societal issues, that organisations at the moment are under the mandate to keep on moving quickly. And I think that's what's keeping them up at night at the moment, this idea that they have to innovate, they have to anticipate the disruptor, and that's what's keeping them going day to day. I think perhaps if we once we move past this period of rapid transformation, if that actually ever does happen, we'll start to see some of those other bigger picture issues that are going to impact not just corporations but society overall moving up the agenda. The other thing to note is just at this particular point in time in Australia, some of the issues that made the top 10 are particular at this point. So political paralysis made the list, and regulation. And obviously it's a very unique time in the Australian corporate landscape at the moment. We have a Royal Commission that has caused immense change and is going to cause immense change, and that's top of mind for the finance sector but also for other related sectors. And we've got some sectors coming up with them as well. Aged care, I think the energy industry is wondering what's going to be happening with them as well. And political paralysis at this point, because when we did the research, it was in November last year.
That sets the scene.
And we've got we had at that stage 3 elections coming up, 2 state and 1 federal. We still have 1 state and 1 federal to go. And I think certainly for CEOs, these sort of years are big years for them, where they think about what is happening and what might not happen while this is going on.
And there's another trend on there around cost competitiveness, and I think we're seeing is investments needed for some of the other areas of digital transformation and heavy lifting change in technology in organisations. There is a big cost pressure. So we're seeing that as a key trend.
I mean, cost competitiveness, I think, will always remain an issue for corporations. One of the big things facing Australian CEOs at the moment is, of course, the requirement from customers to keep on delivering more and more for less and less price, because customers are unwilling to pay more, while at the same time we have to recognise labour rates and the general cost of embedding new technology is increasing. So I think that's also one of the key things there.
Well, that plays exactly into my next question about focusing on these top 10 big issues for the CEOs. What kind of elements are required for these organizations to respond to these issues and undertake them well? Because you do look at the cost of the workforce. You do look at the competitive turnaround time. So what elements are required for these organizations to respond in a way that they can beat out the competition?
I think we think it's focusing on the customer first, because with a focus on understanding the customer needs and working from the outside in, corporates and organisations are able to see where they can deliver the most value the most quickly to their customers. And that's quite possibly how you start the transformation. We have a system that we use to help companies do that within a connected enterprise framework, where we look at all the different areas and look at the priority ones and which ones need more and which ones need less. So it's about prioritisation, but based on not your needs but your customer needs.
And that's a fundamental cultural change within organisations. And I think that's what we're seeing, is that actually to succeed with digital transformation effectively, to succeed in becoming an innovative or disruptive company, or to succeed really in customer centricity, it's about leadership and saying we're going to take a different cultural viewpoint. And it's those corporations whose C-suite can actually make that shift, demonstrate and start to prioritise, that we see will be successful in the future.
Well, it's interesting because you talked about the shift in some of these companies really looking at equality of pay.
Yeah.
Which is oftentimes a political issue, but sometimes rectified in the company level a lot more than any regulation could. Are you seeing the same thing with like diversity business councils and other things that are almost more employee-centric
Absolutely.
as well?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of, the employees are one of the biggest brand advocates possible for a company. And now that customers are saying they want not just automation but human service, every single person that touches the customer has to be fully aware of the brand, they have to be supportive of the brand, they have to feel a connection to that brand and to that business. And so the general well-being and health and happiness of the employee is key to achieve that. And we've seen initiatives out of the UK, like, companies over a certain size having to report equality of pay, which has been very interesting. And, it really plays to understanding what's going on within a company, because people in those companies might not have even known the same level was on more or less. And it's essential for corporates to think about the wider employee as a human, not just as a piece of the business.
Interesting. And that human capital has got to be quite competitive too for these corporations that want to make an impact and want to make a difference. You've got to get the best talent, the best skill set out there. So obviously it's also a tool for them to get the right talent over to them.
And sorry, you go. Yeah, and again, it's always linked back to the purpose of the organisation. If you're very clear on your purpose, your values, and your mission, you will find the right employees. It'll be easy to judge the talent and the people that align to your values. And that's what's key, is to have employees in there that are lining up to your values, that can help get the message out there.
It's so true across many sectors. We had a great campfire discussion prior to lunch about associations and organizations, and it really has come down to the value of the industry at hand, the value of your company, how you tell your story, and making sure that value is always a part of your proposition. Even when you think you might be outside of your bounds, if you stick to your values, you probably have a good leg to stand on. Do we have any questions in the audience? Just so you know, we're open to anything you have while we're having our chat up here. But we'll keep going, so when you do, just let us know. Can you discuss you work with a wide swath of companies, and you can't play favorites, obviously. You've got a very big client list. But can you nominate any companies who are doing this particularly well that we would see from a consumer standpoint, or really just taking media in as that standpoint, that really are doing it well, and give us a few examples about how they are?
Yeah, we can. I mean, one of the things we will say, first of all, is that and we might talk about a couple of Australian examples, but generally speaking, Australians' expectations are being set by the global leaders. And this is one of the issues with globalisation, is that those great overseas experiences are really starting to set the standards of what Australian companies have to deliver. Maybe I'll talk about one of mine. So, if we're talking about Australian companies, Qantas came up we recently did a customer excellence report, which looked at customer experiences and who is delivering well and who's not. Overall, the airline sector in Australia is seen to do very well, and Singapore and Emirates certainly set a very high benchmark. Qantas also does very well, and particularly I think given the fact that our national airline is turning 100 next year. If you think about the fact that it's a really historic brand, but yet it's managed these days to become much more modern and innovative in terms of what it's delivering. I think it's got many elements really that are defining what it's doing well at. One of it is a very clear brand proposition, and what it stands for. I think secondly, it uses data very well. I mean, the Qantas frequent flyer database, I think there aren't many Australians who aren't on it and aren't motivated to keep their details up to date, but they also are very good at sort of utilising that data to deliver good experiences to all of us, to try and proactively anticipate our travel needs and the dreams that we might have with it. And thirdly, they really do listen to their customers. So they've had implemented for a very long time a very strong voice of customer program that is more than just a simple one question, what did you think of us? They really have looked at modelling the voice of customer to understand predictively what will surprise customers and delight them, and what makes to satisfying experiences so that they can do better. So they have always put the voice of the customer at the centre of their organisation, they have in the past few years. So I think they're just three elements of what's been helping them along.
Another one that came out in our customer excellence report. So this is Australians that have voted for the customers that the customers have voted for the companies that provide the best experience. Another one was Bunnings, and so when we saw that come out so high, we really wanted to look into why are they there up there, and Bunnings have a very good sense of purpose, a mission that they follow through on. So they have a very equal employment opportunity position that they talk about and is visible when you go into a store. The sausage sizzle, and it's surprising, but that is quite possibly one of the key things. And what is it about that? Well, it gives Bunnings a place of in the community, and it makes people feel like there's a sense of place and a sense of security, you know, and something that they can look forward to or expect when they go there. It never lets them down. There's also a helpfulness about the brand, and the ability for them to, you know, provide how-to videos and in-store, you know, cards on how to, I don't know, sand a deck or whatever it might be that you're doing that weekend, and they will help you on staff. They also have a good supplier policy, and the things they do internally are seen externally, and then they're judged well on those things. So that's another interesting thing. And Bendigo Bank is another one that we all love. I don't know if you've ever seen anything from Bendigo Bank, but it's really about the way they talk to customers and the intimacy they have. Their data allows them to be very personalised in their interactions, and also what they do is they make sure that they're you know, for example, the branch manager, your nearest branch manager's mobile number is given to you when you get a mortgage. So you can call any time and have a chat about it. So for that makes it very open and very inclusive, and that really makes people feel good, and that customer experience is very, very special.
Yeah, I think Bendigo has always been interesting to us. Well, particularly last year, it was interesting to us because it was rated as one of the highest customer experiences, and we weren't expecting a bank to get there, given last year, and yet it was huge. It was very highly rated. It was probably, and I think the next financial institution came 60 ranked points below it.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But I think one of the other things about it is that it very clearly expresses what the brand means in terms of being a community brand, and they make sure they live those values through every employee as well as every customer interaction. So I think one of the other great things is they make their I don't think they make them, but they encourage all their branch team members to belong to community organisations, to actively be part of the community because they are a community bank. And I think that genuineness comes through, and at that point, that's when you start to build trust as well. So you have a great customer experience, the brand is trusted because it's genuine, and so therefore it manages to survive what has been quite a decimation of the financial services sector recently, and to thrive, in fact.
And it's such a transactional industry that oftentimes that human touch is forgotten about, you know, whether because you're doing everything online or you know, it's interesting. Do you think when they have the branch managers belong to community organizations, and as many organizations here, how many of you belong to a community organization or an association for the industry? Not many, couple. Oh, good. Because that really does send a different message, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
And do some of the larger corporations, of which, of course, they're you know, asking their branch managers to get involved, they feel like they'd have to do that on an incentive level, like give them an incentive in order to do that, or is that just, hey, this is part of your job?
We'd have to ask them, I think, whether they're actually doing it. I mean, I think, you know, look, I really can't answer that level of how they're remunerating for it, but my suspicion is that the bank has developed a culture where everyone needs to be part of the community and give back, and so that's a sense of belonging to the bank itself. Yeah. So I don't suspect it's done with any sense of hardship by the team members.
Southwest Airlines in America is a good example of where they do a lot of community work, and they have a sort of community spirit about them, and it is part of their KPIs. I read an article about them, and I was fascinated because they keep winning Employee of the Year in America, etc. And how and why do they win that? And they do things like help fly people that need operations to various places. And so what it seemed that the staff was able to give back, but within their job role, so that they could give back and work. And it became an integral part of their everyday delivery and part of their everyday KPIs. And that seems like an amazing place to think about working, and all these awards that they're winning as Employer of the Year translates into, you see on the other side, they're getting Airline of the Year, etc. in America for service. So those two things seem to go hand in hand, particularly in a challenging industry like airlines.
Yes, very competitive. And it's interesting. Southwest, I fly Southwest nearly every week in America, and they do a wonderful job at relating that information, not only through material in their in-flight magazine that, let's face it, nobody reads anymore, the in-flight magazine, but you see it in their advertisements. Instead of just surrounding themselves all about the low fares, they really focus on what we do in communities.
Oh, wow.
And I think, because everybody knows Southwest is the cheapest airline out there, and everybody else is trying to be as competitive because everybody else is buying each other up, so you only have a few choices. But you really see the impact of them. And I have to even say, like at the festivals in Chicago and New York and San Francisco, and even in smaller areas, in Austin, Texas, and others, when you see banners of people that are partnering on just a good time for the family, where it keeps costs down and the admission for free, people automatically seem to identify that with the brand, and now they've got that not only brand awareness because of the signage, but this attachment to it.
And isn't that amazing that they can offer cheap fares and still exceptional service?
Yeah.
It's a conundrum for a lot of companies, and they've been able to crack that.
Yeah, boy, would they like to do that. I mean, their logo is a heart,
Yeah,
it's love. So that's one global leader. Are there any other global leaders that you've thought of, in addition to the Australian leaders, that maybe they're looking at or want to mimic in a way?
Well, we talked about airlines before. Singapore Airlines is one that's interesting, and particularly their loyalty club is quite special. They're using new technology to convert points into dollars, or Singapore dollars. So it's a very interesting way of thinking about loyalty differently, and you know what it's like with points. You can never, you might have 20,000 points, you can never get a flight.
Yes.
It's great. So
Right.
it doesn't mean much. You might be converting your Woolworths points to your Qantas points, and you get 10 of them, and that seems like a great bonus, but you never spend them. So being able to find different new ways to actually convert those points into something useful has been very, very clever for them, and it's caused huge uplift in membership, and therefore which rolls into the ability to market and talk to those people, and therefore customers and in the end flights. So they're a very interesting brand in that sense.
It sounds to me, and especially going back to Qantas and when talking about Bunnings and so forth, there are really like three keys that I wrote down, and you may have written down the same ones. Sort of like three core principles in a way: brand, proposition, and then frequent flyer info, like data management, and really keeping in contact with your customers, whether it's thousands or just a few, and then listening to those customers. To know, are they the type of event you want to use drones with, because are they really tech heavy, or are they trying to demonstrate how to do things face to face, just homegrown again? How many of you in the audience have employees of 50 or more? Okay, 100 or more? 200 or more? And do you find that you're gaining an employee centricity? Are you having a great employment retention because of programming that you do internal as well as external for your clients? Do you feel that's a part of it? Do you need to give them some loyalty? Little? Yeah. Are you finding that? Oh, please. Thank you.
Hi there. Yes, I actually work for Hyatt, but I'm 14 days into the job, so I'm
Congratulations.
still doing
You
all of
have a
my
good
online
system.
training. But
So
in
far,
answer to
so
your
good.
question, extremely staff-centric as such, and obviously guest and client-centric as well, but it definitely shines through with the amount of modules I need to complete on my online. Not that I'm doing that here. So we value it, both staff and even ranging from the social club to the Christmas party that they held just last week for the staff. There were indoor fireworks at it. I mean, they really went all out for the staff, and I think even the associate of the year was given a premium economy flights to Paris and New York, 3 nights in each. I mean, they really went all out.
Wow.
and are showing value in staff and in hotels and hospitality, like we all are. Staff retention is genuinely challenging, and it's something we all need to work on and help building their progression of their careers.
What do you think? I mean, it's pretty low cost investment for that kind of impression and other associates for companies really to take care of their own.
I think so. Look, and it sounds great because also it sounds like the rewards are really aligned as well with the company and what it does and its values, so that you sort of feel that the company is living its brand promise. And I think we've seen that if you can change the culture, if you get the employees and the team members to live the brand values, they're going to express that to customers, and customers feel it too. And it becomes this sort of genuine transaction between staff and customers. And of course, that's how you build emotional connection with your customers to your brand, to your customer experiences. And we get back to this idea that that's how you grow loyalty and growth. And it really is, I mean, a formula we've probably been talking about for years and years and years, but it's only in today's environment when we can see just the tools that we have at our hands, the technology, to couple with great employee experiences where we can really deliver something fantastic and where customers are starting to really expect it. We have to keep on keeping pace.
I like how you mentioned the emotional connection. And in a day that we're talking about disruption and innovation and digitization, you're really keeping that emotional thread in there. Are you are you global, regional, or city specific on property here in Sydney?
Yeah, at the High Regency down in Darling Harbour.
Okay, so that really shows it's not just something to do globally for the company or regionally. You can do it on that micro of a level.
But I would say as well, even for PCOs, companies that in the room and at this conference who only have maybe 10 to 20 staff, if all those 10 to 20 staff are living and breathing that unique company culture for that particular PCO, whether it's the phone call after receiving the contract, or whether it's the sending flowers on the wedding anniversary, or knowing the name of the dog, it all counts. And I think that does show your company culture. This is how we treat our clients, and in turn, the business owner of the PCO can also reward its staff in turn.
Yeah, it's that nice personal touch that I think sometimes we feel is absent these days.
And I think it's interesting you talk about that, because then you talk about controls. So how much do you need to control employees, and how much can you let them be and do and make their own decisions on dealing with customers? And we're seeing more and more companies ask that question. So what can we do to allow and give greater control to people that are talking directly to customers? So what do we need to put around them in order to give them that flexibility and freedom to answer the customer need then and there and in the moment, rather than wait or go back or take it up higher.
That instant gratification is awfully nice.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of gratification, when you look for the both of you in the coming year, you did a lot of this research last November. As you mentioned, there's a lot of political movement going on that we don't know exactly where it's going to go yet, but this is the year that it will in the next few months. To close this out, what do you see individually as your personal excitement for the year ahead? What are you looking for that you feel is going to be really interesting to keep tabs on? Not just internally at Kpmg and folks like Acuity, but that we all might want to take a notice of.
Well, for me, I think that it's been a really interesting period of time for consumers and for corporations to really relook at what for corporations they offer to customers and how well they're doing it, and for consumers to say, do we really trust what you're doing? So for the next couple of years, I'm really interested in the fact of how are we all going to build trust? How are we actually going to prove and be genuine and different? I think, and to really to find what our brand purpose is, to make it genuine, honest, and then to be honest and genuine in our promises to customers and how we deliver them back. And I'm going to be keen to see who manages to do that really well, and possibly who tries but doesn't do it well. So for me, I think that's what I'm looking forward to with interest.
Very cool.
And completely agree. That's spot on, Amanda. I completely agree with what you said. And I think to build on that, the culture, the company culture. So how do you build the culture from the inside in order to meet the needs of the customer on the outside? And how do you bring that through all your employees? It'll be very interesting to see how that develops over the next few years.
Well, it's been very interesting to see how what you've developed really affects us on all levels. So thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you for your
Ladies and gentlemen, Carmen Bekker and Amanda Hicks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now...